Okay, there we go.
Hello.
Hey, Nick.
I had some technical difficulties joining today, unfortunately. I hope everybody is doing great.
Doing good, no problem. Yeah, Twitter can be difficult at times with the Twitter Spaces, but glad you can make it. As I said a little earlier, the purpose of this Twitter Space today is to talk a little bit about Flair Finance and what they're building, their native network, what's going on with XDC. I know the community has been pretty excited to learn more about what Flair Finance is up to. So today we're going to be joined by Nik, who is the CEO of Flair Finance. Who better, right, to learn more about what they're building than the CEO? And then we're also going to be joined by Flair Community, who will help contribute to the conversation today. We will get to community questions. Everyone just be patient. If you request to speak, just be patient with us. We see that you're requesting. We will get to you. Just give us a little bit of time. We'll try to get to some questions in the middle of the conversation or if we feel it's a good time, but we usually kind of like to save them towards the end. But if you do have something that you want to ask, go ahead and request, and if we can get you in, we will get you in. Again, so the purpose of this AMA today and Twitter Space is to talk a little bit about Flair Finance. So, Nik, do you want to just introduce yourself really quick, and actually we'll go ahead and let Flair Community after you introduce themselves, and then after that we'll get into a good overview of Flair Finance. But first, you want to just introduce yourself real quick?
Definitely. First of all, thank you for having me here and for giving the opportunity to talk a bit more about FLR Finance. So yeah, as most of you, my name is Nik, or else Nicky. I'm the CEO of FLR Finance. Mostly a technical person, I would say, from my background. I've been building tech-related products from traditional finance to health tech for the last 13 to 14 years, almost as much as I can remember myself. Yeah, and now I'm building FLR Finance for the last 2.5 years. Initially, I was the tech lead and the CTO, and for the last almost exactly a year now, I've been acting as a CEO.
Awesome. I know we'll want to get into that a little bit too as we progress through the conversation, but you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick, Flair Community, or how you would like us to address you?
Yeah, sure. My name's John, and I've been following the Flair network and the Songbird network too for quite some time now. Just over 2 years. I've been in crypto since 2017, a computer science graduate, and I've just been following this space very closely and I've transitioned to more focus on the Flair community and bringing awareness to various projects that are making really novel concepts within the space, and obviously FLR Finance being one of them.
Yeah, I think that 2017 is probably a similar time frame to a lot of people. So I'm pretty sure there's a commonality with that with a lot of people on here. I guess let's get into that a little bit too, Nik. I know you talked a little bit about 13 years or so and some of the previous industries that you worked on. When did you start really getting into building on blockchain technology? And I guess before that even, can you talk a little bit about what your building experience was before that?
Sadly, so I was introduced to the blockchain industry around, I would say, 2011 to 2012 by Dionysis, who is the lead of our academic arm, and currently he's actually teaching blockchain in Stanford. And yeah, since then things just kept making sense to us. Overall, as a team, I was with a team of other individuals who we still to this day work together actually. And I really started building later. At the year React.js came out, for anybody more familiar with development, I started building one of the first research projects in Europe for a company called BD Swiss, and it was one of the first Bitcoin exchanges. Never got to see the light of the day, unfortunately. But after that, I had several projects. I worked a little bit on Steemit, for those again who know what that is. Quite an old chain, if we can call it a chain. I'm not sure how they identify right now. And yeah, after that I started my own agency in which I built several research projects around private blockchains for some research centers in Italy, hospitals and universities. And right after that I started working with the co-founders of FLR Finance on the Muse protocol, and shortly after built FLR Finance. So yeah, it's been quite a while in this industry. I have also contributed in the meantime in between projects for others out there as a consultant or as a freelancer from time to time. Yeah, I guess that's an overview
Yeah, so looks like yours is actually different than ours and way before 2017 then. I guess let's go ahead and get into that. How did you get in with Flair Finance and start on that? And then can you give us an overview of what Flair Finance is and what you guys are aiming to build?
Definitely. We started the FLR Finance's ecosystem of DeFi protocols and products, and I would say it's quite evolved since then. Right now, I would characterize us more as a software house and research center around Web3. And what we're doing is we're helping both entities and end users to understand the Web3 technology better and to use it to the best of their ability.
Is that what you guys have been trying to get done, I guess, with your education arm you mentioned, right? Is that part of what you guys are doing?
Yeah, exactly. So the idea came up earlier this year, and we noticed from multiple projects out there that either there have been quite a little or to none research backing the project itself, starting from the functions of the project to the tokenomics, the rewards, and so on. Like the whole basis was not proven, it was not researched. A lot of times it was just assumptions which people went ahead and tried building, which to an extent it's totally fine, right? But when we're getting to larger TVLs or claiming ourselves as financial institutions or providing services such as swaps or any kind of financial or data related industries, we should be much more careful, and there has to be research backing every single decision. Audits have to be very thorough. And once we realized that, we started building our academic arm, our kind of research facility, if we can call it that way, in order to start kind of doing exactly that. Every single assumption or change that we try to introduce should be fact checked by some of the best individuals or like some of the most acknowledged professionals in the space. We're doing that for almost, I would say, 10 to 12 months now. And since we created a pretty thorough process of deployments of how things are checked, we gladly had no incidents whatsoever after that, after releasing actually 7 products in a single calendar year. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to get into that a little bit too, because it seems, I guess, this academic arm started roughly around the time that you became CEO. That's probably accurate, right?
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. Yeah, and I want to get into that a little bit too. But before we dive further into that, can you get into a little bit about some of the stuff that you guys have built so far, right? Some of the stuff specifically like XDC Network. What have been some of the recent developments that have happened around the XDC Network? And then after that, even some of the stuff that has been developed on your native chain or other chains that you guys are working on.
Definitely. So for the last 1.5 years and more, I would say, we have been building a bridge, as we have in the past released several iterations of that bridge, starting with some of our first beta tests on the very first custom networks. So yeah, we have been working on that for a very long time. And the goal of that is to bridge XDC to any chain that we are working on or partnering with, starting with Flair and Songbird more specifically. And this bridge might be not the most unique one from the perspective of code, but what we really focused on is on threat models and what exactly can go wrong. Since during the last 1 year, there has been tons of hacks and exploits around the bridges. What really differentiates this one from everything else is that we're working very thoroughly on how exactly everything is documented, how exactly every entity or validator that works with this bridge would be accountable or not accountable for any mistakes, so that at the end of the day, if something 1 in a billion goes wrong, we all together as a community would be able to prosecute the party which was the hacker or the malicious, right? Without having any issues of going to the authorities and how exactly that would stand. So that's the most kind of unique part of our bridge. And of course, the security methods that we use, kind of all the steps that we require to have for our validators and for every entity involved is pretty rigorous, I would say. Yeah, that would be the first related to XDC project. I will make a small pause. Maybe you have some more specific questions.
Yeah, I know. Did you want to get into that a little bit further? I know there were some questions that you wanted to ask around the Flair bridge specifically. Was it Flair Community or John?
I had some questions relating to the APY cloud.
Okay, it was the APY cloud. I know that's another thing that we want to get on, but for the bridge specifically, is there anything specifically that you would like to ask about the bridge, or do you want to get into the APY cloud a little later?
I guess with the bridge, I think it is very interesting. Like, how are users going to be able to go through this process? What would the process be for someone in the XDC community wanting to bring assets onto Flair? Is it a case of interacting with smart contracts on that side, and then it's republished back onto the Flair side of things, or?
Yeah, definitely. So the bridge itself acts in a very simple way. There is a set of smart contracts on the XDC network, and there is a set of contracts on the other side, on the custom, on Songbird, and on the Flair network. And there's two ways. You can deposit money from the XDC network to Flair or Songbird, and the other way around, you can withdraw or deposit other kind of tokens from Flair or Songbird to the XDC network. So it's two ways pretty much. And the smart contracts are built in a way where you either deposit or withdraw the funds from one network. There is a set of validators, which are trusted parties, which would have like legal agreements between each other, who validate those transactions on one side, on the other. And then once the transactions are validated, those funds are minted or burned on the other side. So in a case of example, let's say you, John, will go tomorrow and want to wrap some XDC from the XDC network to Songbird. You would go to our UI, or you can directly interact with our smart contracts. And that way you would be able to select the amount you want to wrap. A very important aspect here is that you would first need to wrap your XDC for them to become a wrapped XDC on the XDC network. And then that wrapped XDC, you deposit to one of the FLR Finance smart contracts. Once that deposit has happened, all the validators now check for a specific event on that smart contract. And once a quorum has been reached, 5 out of 10 or 10 out of 15 as we scale, we pretty much mint the wrapped XDC on the Songbird side of the bridge. If then John wants to put his money back to the XDC network, he can go ahead on the bridge again on the side of Songbird and withdraw the funds once the validators see that event again, and they reach a quorum which confirms that it's indeed a non-malicious transaction. His funds are back to his XDC wallet on the XDC side. So yeah, I hope that is clear enough.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do have another follow-up question, because I know that you've recently released the Ori wallet, right? And it's a multi-sig wallet solution. And does that tie into the security of the Flair wrap in any way?
So all the smart contracts that are related to the Flair wrap, and actually to any one of the products of FLR Finance very soon, will be owned by an Ori wallet. And pretty much what will happen is that the validators themselves will be the quorum for the administrator of the whole bridge. So that means that since there is a legal agreement between the parties, everybody is assumed to be trusted, a trusted party. If they become an untrusted party, they can be prosecuted. And that means that we kind of scale down the possibilities of somebody going rogue and like just stealing the administrator wallet, let's say, from the community. So yeah, those will be managed fully by the Ori application. And that was the main reason we released this product, because we saw many developers, including ourselves, not having the ability to secure their smart contracts, starting with the Flair network and the Songbird. And once we started scaling up and going and talking with the XDC community and the XDC Foundation, we realized that the problem is much bigger than just this network. Other people are looking into solutions around that as well. And we started releasing the Ori wallet on the other chains for that exact reason.
So I know XDC Network is supported now on Ori. I'm guessing it is with Flair as well. Are there any other chains that would be supported on Ori in the future, or are those the main ones at the moment?
So at the moment, we have the Flair network, Songbird network, XDC network, and Kava mainnet. So those are mainnets or canary networks that are supported by Ori. And then we have the XDC Apothem network, which is the testnet, and the custom testnet on the Flair side, which are the testnets which are supported. We constantly speak with more networks which might need those kind of features or this functionality. But yeah, right now there's no specific plans on expansion on that side. We're trying to make sure that the current partners have all the features needed and that the setup is as stable as it can be.
Yeah, and I know it was just announced even a few weeks ago or so, the information about Ori and that being live already. But now what about the bridge? So where are we at right now in the development phase of the bridge, specifically with XDC Network?
Well, yeah, the bridge is actually ready. It's functioning fully right now internally. We're going through tests. I believe in the next days, we will start the final internal testing phase of the interface, actually, of the dApp for the Flair app. And our goal is very soon. I do not want to say a date because we're still waiting for several audits. We will open it for public testing. There are some organizational and operational things in the middle, which means that all the validator would have to set up their infrastructure. They would have to sign that legal agreement between each other. So there are things of human nature in the middle, which we're waiting for. And one last thing that I would like to mention is that we had already N+1 audits for the bridge. The audit was conducted and completed yesterday by Watchbug, who will in the next days start and hopefully in the next 2 weeks maximum conduct the validator node audit. And that would mean that on the technical side, we would be fully ready, meaning that all the contract has been already written and we are done on that side for quite some time. And now it's operational and organizational topics to be covered only. I know that it could be quite frustrating for the community out there to wait for so long and to all the time listen, oh, it will be out soon. However, we want to ensure security over anything else at this point, as we have seen so many incidents with bridges around the blockchain community.
Yeah, I don't think people will be upset with that, making sure everything is secure. And let's get into that a little bit too. I know you mentioned audits. Can you just high-level overview real quick of everything that you guys are getting audited? And then get into a little bit more on how you guys are securing it. I know you've talked a little bit about like the validators and stuff like that, but can you just talk a little bit about some of the other things that you guys have put in place to make sure that this bridge is secure?
Definitely. We started with the development process. We had several quite smart, I would say, individuals working on that. So one of the engineers was working at Paraswap, a good example before this. Those people created the model of the bridge. They went back to our academic arm, which reviewed the validity of the assumptions and did several tests and simulations. Once that was completed and we figured out that our assumptions are valid and they can stand, we went ahead and created the implementation. Once the implementation was done with, we did several internal tests. After those internal tests, we completed an internal audit, again by our academic arm, of the implementation. By the completion of the audit from the academic arm, we introduced an external party, which was Watchbug, which was the first external party to audit the code base. And yeah, as I said yesterday, that was completed. And after that, they're going to the second part of the code base, which is the validator nodes, which again, on our side, we took the same exactly approach. And now we're at the phase where the external unbiased party will complete the audit of the validator node. In the meantime, in the real world, we went ahead and found several validator nodes or parties which would be willing to run a validator node. We ensured that those are actual companies, that they're actual physical and third companies somewhere around the world. We tried to gather companies from as many decentralized points as possible, such as Netherlands, where we are based, US, Estonia, and more. So the validators are distributed around the world. We ensure that they're fully on board with their responsibilities and what exactly will be the legal stipulations for each one of the validators. Now we are working with our legal team and legal department to put all those in written and sign the agreements between them. Once that is done, the bridge can go live in the mode of like production, let's say, or at least the Canary network where it can transact with real money. Yeah, I think that is most of the parts of the process that we followed. In the meantime, also what we did is we started educating the validators on security practices, from the basic ones of how do you store the validator keys to much more extreme kind of scenarios, such as what happens if a validator gets kidnapped, what happens if the key gets destroyed, what exactly should be the policies if there is a case of a hack, and so on. So we tried also on the human level to prevent any kind of security issues or one single point of failures, let's say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to look into those different levels of security as well, beyond just audits. I know when people in the community are talking about swaps or anything that's built, they talk about smart contract audits, and they may feel, I guess, more safe or comfortable with using something if there's smart contract audit or something like that. But there's a lot more to security than just a smart contract audit. There's so many other levels involved, and it seems like you guys have worked to address those different levels of security. And I guess it seems like your education arm was quite a bit involved with this process as well. Was that one of the main reasons for bringing that on, or is there, I guess, some education? You call it the education arm. Is there going to be some education coming out from that group, like videos or tutorials or anything like that? Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So it is for sure in our goals to start educating the community a little bit more around that. And that's why we already have started producing some more content out there. Internally, we already started making webinars and seminars around security and security policies, what can go wrong, what shouldn't be a possibility to go wrong, and so on and so forth. There is a goal at the end of the day and sometime in the future to make those seminars and to run some more public kind of lessons and courses. However, right now we will be focusing on that being a very strict process internally, and that we're able to educate our partners and other entities to start with. And once we will have a more defined process or more defined needs, then we will definitely go ahead and share those things publicly as well.
All right, we got Ori and we've got the bridge, right, when it comes to XDC Network specifically that we've talked about so far. Can you get into a little bit about some other things that the XDC community would have to look forward to when it comes to Flair Finance?
Yeah, definitely. I believe, first of all, there are different aspects of products that are quite unique in the entire world of Web3, such as the Clover protocol, the Hermes protocol. There's a set of features on our NFT marketplace which you cannot find that easily in the Web3 world out there. But yeah, I believe it is very interesting and exciting to see finally another community outside of our, like, let's say, comfort zone and our friends in the Songbird Flair community to join us to be able to swap, use farming pools, buy or sell NFTs, right? Or interact with any of our products or potentially other products on the Songbird network as well, using their wrap tokens and nothing more, pretty much just some cents for gas, I assume. But yeah, it's first for Songbird. I believe, as I said, there's many products that we provide that are quite unique to Web3 overall. So yeah, the XDC community will be able to utilize all those things. And finally, the APY cloud, I think, will be something quite interesting because it's a first. And this partnership, this kind of bridging of the token would mean that the APY cloud would accumulate also, let's say, funds and cashback, to put it nicer, from other communities and other networks, right?
Yeah. Okay, so the APY cloud, I know we talked about that a little bit in the beginning. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? What is the APY cloud and where are you guys at right now, I guess, in the development process of the APY cloud?
Definitely. The APY cloud is what we call the central yield aggregator. And its goal is to connect all of the products of our ecosystem into one central place. In what way? So every time there is a transaction that happens on our ecosystem, no matter on which product, piece of the fees from that transaction go back to the APY cloud. And the APY cloud now stores those fees and accumulates fees from all the products, as I mentioned. At the end of the day, distributing those to our governance token holders and stakers, right? The system accumulates fees and revenues from the platforms, and then it distributes it back to the community, to those people who stake in our governance system. About the development, the product has been fully developed, and right now it is being reviewed by our academic arm, one actually of some of the most acknowledged people in the game theory space right now is looking through the protocol and tries to simulate different market conditions through the years, through the months, to see if it breaks, where it breaks, and why. We had to change a lot of things along the way, and I'm pretty confident that we will change many more. Yeah, the development has been completed, but I'm very positive that we will still work on it again quite several times in the future. It has been audited once. We will re-audit it after all the tests has been gone through. And once that is done, we will deploy it on the custom testnet, Songbird, and Flair, of course, as our deployment and development process states.
Yeah, I think APY Cloud is one of the most unique features of FLR Finance. And I think it's one of the main draws, if I'm honest, this idea of all of these products coming in harmony together to aggregate the fees and then distribute them back to the holders of the governance token, but in a sustainable way. Am I right in thinking that the APY cloud on Songbird, it's been actually running in the background for quite some time now, and it's been accruing these fees so that when it does go live, there's already quite a heavy treasury, let's say, that's due to be distributed to the holders of both XFi and SFIN?
Yep, that is approximately correct. We have been accumulating the funds. It's not up to me to state if it's a big treasury or small. There is definitely the treasury of the APY cloud, which has been accumulating for over a year now through the usage of our protocols. And yeah, the Songbird version 1, once it's live, it will receive all those fees retrospectively, and it will start distributing those in a healthy manner. And that's, I believe, what is the most important part right now, to ensure that through the years, 5-10 years from now, the system will be able to act in a healthy manner by itself without our interference.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the other really interesting things about the APY cloud is it's going to draw funds from multiple networks. You've got FLR Wrap. So the people that may want to move XDC across to the Flair using FLR Wrap, there's going to be a fee there somewhere, and that could be in XDC. But once you start integrating all of some other chains, you're also going to be accruing fees in different assets. So when that gets distributed, it's almost going to be a diverse passive income, right?
That is exactly correct. The more chains and the more products we integrate, the more of tokens and the more variety of assets the API cloud will receive. However, one thing that I would love to mention, and I hope my partners will not get mad at me for mentioning it a bit earlier, is that at the end of the day, there will be only two API clouds, regardless of how many networks we integrate our products into. Meaning that there will be the experimental finance suite on Songbird, which its goal has been and will continue being to test the products out. So anybody who participates in the experimental suite will keep being the first person to see and try the new products in action, including the API cloud. And that API cloud will be tied to the governance system of Songbird. However, the second part of the API cloud, the Flair Network API cloud, will be accruing fees from as many networks that we launch on our products, right? And the most interesting part of that is that governance system, which is connected to that API cloud, will be governing all of the products on all of the networks, right? So let's say we launch, hopefully soon, our product suite on the XDC network. So now all the fees from our products on the XDC network will be occurring under that one API cloud. There will be no separate one on the XDC network. And also, the governance will be uniformal, meaning that anybody who wants to govern the products on the XDC network would have to go with their tokens to the Flair network and do their proposals or their decisions, which is also extremely unique, I believe. And it is the most important step that we will be taking towards an omni-chain experience where the user shouldn't be as aware of which chain they're using and what they're interacting with.
So participants on XDC won't have to worry about going to like another chain or anything like that. They'll be able to interact with the ecosystem as far as governance wise. You're saying even being on XDC only, or will they have to convert to another chain?
So our goal is for the users who are on XDC to be able to interact with all of our products regardless on which chain they are.
Okay, I see. Can we get into that a little bit? I know you've covered it pretty good here, but and I know, John, you mentioned this too, right? And that's where this question comes from in conversations that we've been having before this. But can you get more detailed into how XDC Network participants will be able to utilize this?
Yeah, definitely. So let's say somebody on the XDC network wants to swap his XDC for SFIN and then also use both his XDC and his SFIN to provide liquidity in our pools. That user wouldn't need to go ahead and switch around networks or do things like that. He should be able to do that directly from one platform with several clicks, right? With the user experience being as smooth as that is possible. Obviously, just to clarify, it's a very long-term goal. It is something that is technically very hard to achieve. So yeah, it is something that we're working towards, but we cannot promise that it will be out there in 2 or 3 months from now.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to add on API Cloud?
I think that's it from me. I'm honestly super excited about it, and the fact that it is retaining just to a couple of changes, Songbird and the Flair network. I think that's an incredible move because you see a lot of projects that duplicate the tokens, sort of try and replicate it on chains, and that sort of dilutes the value. Whereas restricting it to Songbird and the Flair network, you're going to retain that value and not dilute it.
Yep. Although, just to be clear, you would still be able to utilize your token on the other network. So you would be able to utilize your YFLR in the long term on the XDC network or on the Kava network or on any network that we're going to launch any of our products. So yeah, it's not that we're trying to lock the value per se in any one of those chains. We want to create unity and to bring all those chains together and to create this one larger community which shares common goals and ambitions. There is a technological aspect of that. Yes, we should and we need to choose a chain to run several of those aspects, but it is more of the fact that there has to be a decision rather than our preference to one single chain. Yeah, so to summarize, our goal is for all the chains and all of our partners to run together in a uniformal experience without any barriers, pretty much.
I know you've been pretty active on Twitter over the past few days. I'd like to get into that a little bit. I know there was some confusion from the community on assets native to the Flair network versus Flair Finance. There was some confusion there. Can you just touch on that a little bit? I know there was quite a few questions in the community addressed to you about that.
Yeah, there has been a lot of questions overall. And although Flintstone and Tanasmos and Natalie and all of our moderators have been doing an amazing job overall to manage all the questions and try to answer them to everybody. We noticed that our communications, let's say, and the way we bring our news to our community is not as thorough and transparent as it could be. So I decided personally to start bringing more news to the community and to try to make things as clear and transparent as possible. So yeah, I've been much more active on Twitter. I'm actually writing my first article, which will be soon out there. Hopefully that will answer a lot of questions from the past, but also for the upcoming assets on the networks and the upcoming products as well. I assume most of questions around the assets on the Flair network will be when will the airdrop happen? That is a question that I cannot answer. We have promised that it will be a random date and that is how it will happen. There is a lot of announcements to come around distributions and around the things that we learned from the experimental finance suite, but I definitely cannot comment neither on the snapshot date, neither on whether it has happened or not. It might have happened, it might not have happened, neither on how and when exactly that will be the case.
Yeah, and I know, can you get a little bit into, I guess, the differences with the Flair network and Songbird, like your native chain that you guys started building on, and then get into a little bit about how the development process has been with XDC in comparison to what you guys have experienced with like Songbird and Flair.
Yeah, definitely. So we started with Flair overall because around 3 years ago when we started developing, we loved the value proposition that they brought to the community. We still do. However, in between, they released their Songbird network. And somewhere around that time, we realized how powerful it can be and how powerful the use of that can be towards the development community. Coming from a more Web2 side of the world, to say, I was used to very thorough deployments and especially working in more regulated places like health tech. A mistake could go a long way. So there usually were no mistakes, right? Because the mistakes would happen way before something would go to the production. And that is a reason that earlier this year we introduced, earlier in 2020, actually, to be fair, we introduced our deployment process, which has 12 steps whenever we will launch to the mainnet. And that means that every single product and every single change that we deploy is going through 12 deployments, 2 of which are public tests before it ever reaches the mainnet. That allows us to utilize 3 networks along the way for any deployment process. We usually start with the custom network. We deploy on the development stage of the custom network where our team internally tests everything and makes sure that works good. We're then deployed to the staging phase of the custom network where some of external testers, a group of, I believe it's about 10 people, go through our products and they try to break them. And then we deploy to the production environment of Coston, which is what the whole community can see, interact with, and play around with. Once some period of time has been through, obviously all the code has been audited and so on, we proceed with deploying our code to the development stage of the Songbird network. Then we proceed, whenever that is again tested internally by our team, we proceed to deploy that code to the staging. Again, that staging of the Songbird network is tested by internal testers who are from our community. As I said, 10 approximately people. Once the testing is done there and it's been up for quite some time, we deploy that to the Songbird production network or platform. After quite some time, the product running there with real value tokens and so on, only then we consider to deploy that product to the development of the Flair network, which has happened already with several of our products, spoiler alert. Once that is tested fully again internally, it goes to the staging of Flair network. Once it's tested by our beta testers pretty much, that goes to the production of the Flair network. So overall, we follow the traditional kind of methodology of Web2, going from development to staging to production. And that we are able to do using the Coston and Songbird network on the level of the chain as well, which on a lot of ecosystems is unfortunately not possible. And it's definitely something that we would suggest to any developer building, especially financial products, to go ahead with as a process. Yeah, I hope that covers the question, by the way.
Yeah, and what's your, I guess that's also, I think we've already been at almost an hour. Does anyone in the community have any questions for Nik? Anything about what they've been building or anything around the XDC network? Now would be a good time to get that in before we start wrapping it up in a little bit. Looks like we do have a question. All right, give me a second. Okay, we have Quincy who wants to ask a question. What's up, Quincy? Go ahead.
One question I had was, you guys spoke earlier on how part of your interoperability strategy is to allow people to not only be able to engage with Flair on Flair, but also be able to engage with Flair on other networks, be able to engage with these technologies on other networks. Does that also go vice versa? If somebody were to build, let's say, some sort of application or some sort of token or some sort of functionality on XDC, could they also have that access on your networks as well? Vice versa the other way?
Yeah, definitely. Our goal is not to focus on Flair. That might have came out wrong. Of course, Flair is our home per se, and we started building there, but the users should be able to interact with any chain from any chain, right? So they might be on Flair and they want to interact with our products on the XDC network. They should and they will be able to do as well, like vice versa would work.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that just sounds like a really novel idea to me, and that's amazing considering, because that's quintessential interoperability right there, especially between applications.
Yeah, definitely. And in my opinion, it brings the next X amount of users to the blockchain. I don't want to say 1 million or 2 million, which is quite used out there, but to put it easy, in an easy explanation, if my mom would like to use our products right now, she wouldn't be able to. And she should, right? Because that would mean real interoperability, right? If somebody who doesn't understand the blockchain can go ahead and buy a t-shirt or a golden necklace from the FLR Finance Drops platform without caring or knowing which blockchain they bought it from, that I believe is the next step to the Web3 technologies overall.
That's amazing. One other question I did want to ask was, do you guys have any technical challenges when dealing with latency across networks? Because that's the first thing that I think of, is if you have someone on XDC engaging with Flair or engaging with another network through Flair, that there could potentially be latency issues, or could that be quelled with just a longer response time in terms of a pending transaction?
So yes and no. There are always problems with delays. Other servers are slower than others. Internet connection is not the same in all the countries. So it's very hard to ensure that all the validators for the bridge, for example, will have the same latency and the same times of execution. We are not that concerned of that because our kind of motto on that aspect is security over livingness, which means that if the transaction took 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 10 extra minutes, or as much as it is to go to the user, that is not as important as keeping the entire system and infrastructure secure. So we are not focusing that much on delays or things like that.
No, that makes sense. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Quincy. Does anyone else have any questions before we start wrapping it up in a minute? We'll keep the conversation going for a few more minutes, and if anybody has any questions, just request to speak and we'll get to you as soon as we can. So Nik, I know you shared the other day that you got to meet with Billy over there in Dubai. How did that go?
Yep, that was a great experience. I'm always very excited to meet other leaders in the space and other teams in person because the real interaction starts from the real life, right? And at the end of the day, we're building products and projects for real people out there in the real world. And it's very important to meet those partners or people or customers, whatever you want to call it, and whatever level of interaction you have, because it helps you understand their pain points, what they're striving towards, and what our goals are, and where are common grounds, right? I was very excited about it. I believe there's so many synergies and common grounds between FLR Finance and XDC. And yeah, I think people will see many initiatives, let's say, from our side towards the XDC community, and hopefully vice versa as well.
Yeah, I know every time I get to go and work with colleagues in person or get to go to at least some sort of event in person, it always does help re-energize because always working from your same little office or working remote with a team, it works, right? Everybody's used to working that way, but when you get to do some more in-person stuff, it definitely does help re-energize and refocus a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And it also helps new ideas to come to life. Things work faster and you get to come closer with your team, right? It's extremely important for people who work together to share human real life experiences, right? And come closer as individuals, because that's what brings communities closer and builds stronger relationships.
It looks like we do have another question.
Definitely.
All right, Winston, I believe. Yeah, go ahead. You're a speaker. Just unmute your mic.
I had a quick question. I'm not very deep into the technicals on how the networks work. I was curious about passive income strategies with XDC and the Flair network. I was wondering, and maybe this is XDC specific, but are they planning on opening up staking at some point for staking rewards? Or would this be only a strategy to use through the Flair network with a wrapped XDC?
So yeah, initially you would only be able, from what I know, to stake and farm using your wrapped XDC on the Songbird network to start with, and eventually on Flair. However, I really hope that we will launch and bring our products to the XDC network. So potentially there would be other kind of initiatives on that side. However, that is not in our direct and short-term plans right now.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for asking. All right, we do have another question. All right, Crisp Digital Guitars, go ahead.
Hermes protocol. As a digital artist, I'm really looking forward to leveraging those two protocols on Flair Finance, and just curious as to what interoperability between XDC and those two protocols will be, or what will they look like?
Definitely, and the Clover protocols are some of our latest additions. I'm personally possibly the most excited about the Hermes protocol. I believe it kind of brings real life use cases to the chain. We are hoping to launch on XDC as well. Right now, our contracts are available on Coston and Songbird only. Our next network to launch those protocols will be the Ethereum network. And right now, what we're working directly is to create the licenses and ensure that all the legals are in place for us to be able to provide that service as a service to other entities and to other companies. So that will come very close, very soon. Yeah, I hope that the XDC network will be happy to host this protocol as well. So you would be able to utilize it there also. Just to clarify, the requirement for making your token physical right now from us would be for you to be a KYC person and for you also to have an actual entity, a business that would be in agreement with FLR Finance to provide that physical item.
Gotcha. Perfect. All right. Well, yeah, thank you very much for that. I'm super stoked on that whole element of your guys' business. So thanks for letting me come up here.
Of course, anytime. Just to clarify for everybody else who is listening what Hermes protocol is. Hermes protocol allows vendors and companies out there to make NFTs redeemable for physical goods. So if, for example, I'm building guitars, I'm now able to sell my guitars as an NFT, and whoever buys the NFT would be able to redeem that NFT into the actual physical guitar off-chain.
So where's the best place to stay up to date with what you guys are working on and what you guys have coming out?
So yeah, right now it is definitely our Twitter. It's actually a speaker right to the right next to the FLR Community Finance. And my Twitter, definitely. Telegram and Discord are always open for any new members. We're trying to keep the discussion open there and very active. So yeah, any of those places. And definitely if you're into reading articles, you can follow me and FLR Finance on media. I think for now, that's it.
All right. And I know any developments that come out around XDC Network, specifically with Flair Finance, will obviously keep the community updated. And if any future developments happen enough, we can definitely set something like this up in the future to elaborate on those further. If anybody has any questions about XDC specifically in relation to Flair Finance, now's the time to ask. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up and just follow XDC Community. Like I said, any developments that will happen around XDC Network specifically, we'll make sure to share with the community. I know XDC Foundation, who's also up here on the Twitter space, thank you for joining, is also good about sharing developments around the XDC Network and Flair Finance. So stay tuned there, and we'll make sure everybody's updated with everything going on with Flair and XDC Network. Nik, I appreciate you taking the time to join for the Flair community, to come up here as well. I know there's a lot of good connections between the community with XDC and with Flair. So this was a no-brainer Twitter space to put on. Yeah, and I know, look, you've put out some good stuff on Twitter lately, too. You've been really engaging with the community a lot and answering a lot of questions. And I wanted to get into a little bit. I know we're a little crunched on time, but people can look at your Twitter to get some updates on, you put some information about stepping into your role as CEO and like when that happened and some of the changes that you guys went through and the way you guys changed some things. I thought that was pretty cool for you to put that out there. So if anybody's interested in that, make sure you follow Nik and look him up on Twitter, and you can get the Twitter thread on that information as well.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to share that, actually. It was a unbelievable experience, to say the least. And yeah, I really enjoyed this Twitter space. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope we'll do this more often. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, I think we will. And anytime you open up on Twitter and you start putting some good information out there and start engaging, you start opening yourself up for some tough questions. So yeah, that was good for you to put yourself out there. And yeah, again, thanks for joining everybody, the Flair community. Thanks for coming in here. Thanks for everybody for asking questions. And we'll get one of these things set up again sometime in the future.
Thank you so much.
Sounds good to me. Thanks for hosting.
Yep. Everybody have a good day.
Have a great day. Bye.